With another Monday comes another brilliant episode of Succession in its final season. This episode gave us more Killer Kendall, one of Roman's best scenes in the entire series, in my opinion, but this episode did one thing that I thought was potentially impossible, something I didn't think I would ever be able to experience, and that is actively disliking, actively loathing a Skarsgård. This episode of television was so well written, it made me actively dislike the sexiest Skarsgård. Wait, no, hold on. Scratch that. This episode made me actively dislike the second to third sexiest Skarsgård. So with this episode, we took a break from the grief and tragedy and heartbreak of the last two episodes, and we got back to business, baby. After a full episode of Logan's death, then a full episode at the wake, I really did expect this episode to be a full one at the funeral, to create a sort of trilogy of grief of Logan's demise. But I foolishly forgot that Madsen sucks, and is the worst man who ever lived, and somehow makes the family of Roys just look like angels. Angels with halos on their heads. I almost can't put into words how much I hate him, but I am doing a review, so I will try. I've always found the character really interesting and fascinating, and I've never actively disliked him. I have always found him kind of an odd enigma, and kind of, I don't know, his like nonchalant way. Like, there's a line in season 3 where he kind of just like hand waves like Logan and Roman, talking about how amazing his like villa or mansion is in Italy on that giant lake, which looks like the greatest place I've ever seen with my eyeballs, and he's just so meh about it. But I don't know, the way he's been presented, I never, like, that didn't make me angry. I just kind of went, fuck this. He's just a character. But in this episode, I found him deplorable. Just a real piece of work. I didn't like him. It makes me mad. And for some reason in this episode, him just being such a charming, sexy character, but being so despicable, being such like a sociopath or a psychopath, I don't know, one or the other. Like, there's that line where he's like, oh, you're not even going to say sorry about my dad? And he's like one-upping whose dad died worse and what situation was worse. But he never said anything like saying sorry about their dad dying, which just happened, and he's thrown them across the world to Norway to do this deal, and as Roman says at the end, which is one of the greatest Roman scenes ever. Like, there are some really great Roman moments that are kind of just like really intense and perverse and kind of messed up. His trouble with his sexuality throughout the series I found really interesting, the way they've kind of tackled that, the way that's slowly developed. So there's some of those scenes that I find really kind of classic Roman. And then, of course, there's all the comedy stuff. But from like a personal kind of emotional level, this might be the best scene. I really did love some of the stuff in the Logan's death episode. The way Roman was responding to it, I found really heartbreaking. And I kind of feel like I connected with him in a way that I hadn't really done before. Because he's so weird. And it's hard to connect with someone who's just so... Yeah, he's got a lot going on, to say the least. The Roman's standing up for, like, himself, his father, Kendall, like, all the Roys, and just kind of telling, what's his name? Eric from True Blood. I've forgotten the guy's name. Doesn't matter. Starts with an M. Telling Eric from True Blood, like, where to shove it, and being just like, I don't know, that whole thing, having it in this, like, I don't know, the show always films in beautiful locations and amazing scenery and set pieces and all this stuff, but having it on the top of a mountain, it was so much more epic and grand. Like, before it really got heated and emotional, I remember thinking, wow, this is like, you put them in different uniforms and costumes or whatever, and like, this is the scene from Lord of the Rings or something. Like, it's so epic, it's so grand, and I love mountains, I love all that kind of fantasy, beautiful, landscapey kind of feeling stuff, and just having this moment up on this mountaintop and have Roman just letting him have it. But then, I don't know, like, the crazy twist of it all is that, like, Roman, like, just smashes him, but it kind of, like, backfires. So despite it being so cathartic and emotionally satisfying to have Roman rip into Eric from True Blood, it backfires in such a bizarre way. Like, at the end of that scene, I just remember being so deflated and just feeling so weird, being like, oh, they're going to have to back out of the deal, but admit that they want to back out of the deal. Like, he's ruined any chance. Like Mads... That's it, Madsen. He's onto them straight away, and he knows what's up. They are not doing it well. Like, they're not being clever about, like, trying to trick him into backing out of the deal himself. He sees right through their charade, I suppose, or their bad business dealing, I suppose would be another way to put it, which is really funny to see how bad they are at doing this. Like, I feel like if Logan Roy wanted to back out of this deal, but, you know, he was going to make Eric from True Blood do it, he'd be able to do it, and that guy wouldn't know what's up. But this, he sees right through it. It's very, very superficial, and they are very obvious about it. They're trying to be clever about it. And so it's so funny that when he gets super emotional, I'm like, he's just totally busted it. They've ruined it. But the way it plays out, where Madsen is so spiteful, so petty, and he really, really wants this deal, kinda, but he cares so little about... I mean, I guess he really, really wants the deal for whatever reason. He's an enigma. You can't possibly understand why he possibly wants ATN, sorry. It just... I don't know. It's so fascinating and kind of frustrating as a character. You're like, oh, just... what is even going on in that giant, godlike, sexy man's brain? And he wants it so badly that he pitches an absurd number. The number jumps to like... I don't know, like 20% from what it was. It's 144 to 192 is psycho. That's a crazy jump. They were like, if we get 149, we'll be pretty happy. 192 is so obscene, they can't say no. Like, he's jumped like so far up. So clearly he's doing it to be like, I don't know, like, I see it as he's being very, very spiteful. And it's not like some kind of, I don't know, it just doesn't even feel like it's a business decision at this point. It's like Roman has somehow ruined their chances of keeping the business, which I guess they wanted, but Roman also didn't necessarily feel like he was on Kendall's side there. Like, Killer Kendall wants to, like, burn the deal. He wants to become new Logan Roy. Logan, his father, continuously said, like probably 6 times in this show, you're not a killer, despite him potentially, technically, manslaughter killer, yeah, technically, but like, in the business sense, you're not a killer, you don't have that kind of animal, bloodthirsty, like, rah, kind of thing. So now that Logan is dead, and we had that whole letter and the underscore / maybe it wasn't an underscore, but I think Kendall, it doesn't really matter what it was, I suppose, in the end. It matters what the people think it was, and Kendall thinks it was an underscore. It thinks, in the end, my father wanted me to run the business, so I've got to have that killer instinct. So he's kind of doing all these things that he thinks his father would do, that he thinks his father would want him to do, and to have that killer instinct, which means botching the deal, burning the deal. But I feel like Roman doesn't really see it that way. I mean, we definitely know that. He clearly, I mean, he just flat out says it, but you can see it on his face. He really wants to honor his father. And it's so interesting seeing these two brothers kind of go at their father's legacy in different ways. One wants to honor what their dad literally said he wanted to do, the deal, despite, we don't know, like Logan on just like a whim could just be like, you know what, I don't want the deal no more. Like, you'd never really know. But at the moment he died, he was technically saying he wanted the deal. So that's where kind of Roman's going to honor what his father wanted to do in that regard, in that kind of way of his legacy. Whereas Kendall wants to honor his legacy in a different way by kind of running the business themselves as his sons and kind of honoring the legacy in that way. So that kind of, I don't know, difference in how they're both kind of viewing how they're kind of honoring their father was really, really interesting to me. Maybe the highlight of the episode. I don't know, I found that really compelling. And then the way that Shiv was kind of going behind their backs, which could potentially be a very Logan Roy thing to do, because she was being ousted by Kendall, which is something that's happened in the last 2 episodes. I knew, as soon as he's like, oh, we won't put your name on the whole thing, but you will be included, Shiv. Of course she wasn't going to be included. Kendall would just be like, oh yeah, we'll get Shiv in, or whatever. But she's being left out of emails, and big group meetings, and all these things are being brought in at the end of things. So Kendall clearly wants to kind of run the ship himself. I feel like he has, like, Roman there, but I kind of feel like he sees Roman as kind of like a second in command, like a hand of the king situation, Game of Thrones wise, if you will. But despite Killer Kendall's best efforts to burn the deal, to ruin the trip to Norway and the deal with the Swede, it all backfires completely because Madsen seems to be so petty and so rich and not care about money. He picks such an obscene number they cannot refuse, and they cannot back out of the deal because then the board will turn on them. Something business or whatever. It's kind of crazy to think that like they're gonna succeed and win and get so much money, like an unfathomable amount of money. I can't even really think about that number. That number to me, it's just so insane. But it's so funny to think that like in this world that they are, where the money does matter. Like of course the money matters, but like winning the situation the way he wanted to win it. Like having this episode end with bloody Madsen being like, Shiv, get me a bloody cheeky photo of your brothers. Because he knows they're going to be sitting on the plane like just depressed and sad because they lost. Because Madsen clearly saw through their charade and knew that they wanted to botch the deal, but he had to botch the deal because of the board members. And so the way that this episode ends feels like a loss, which is so insane because of how much money they have just like gotten. And like the episode starts where he's got like the big board up. He's like 144. We get 149. That's a win. And they get so much more. Like even thinking about that actually makes my brain like kind of shut down a little bit. And like my idea of what the world is and how money works. It just I can't comprehend it. My brain like shuts down. It's like when I think about space and how many billions of stars in the world, and it gets so big. My brain actually kind of shuts down because I start kind of having a panic attack at like how big and how small I am. That's what happens with this money number when I start really thinking about it. And yet they are sad. It's brilliant stuff. I love it so much. And it's really interesting to see how Kendall and Roman, who are up on top, the CEOs at this point, and they've pushed Shiv to the side, and how her and Madsen have kind of won in a way, at least for this episode. One little thing that we got in this episode that I think we've never got in any episodes before, I could be wrong, but from my memory, we've never got before, is like a real deep dive into kind of the movie industry, kind of side of the business and all of that stuff. I feel like we really focused on cruises and the news, but the movie thing has always like been there, but there's never been like a focus on it. And having them talking about budgets and like the movie, you know, having to do reshoots and all this kind of stuff. Like as someone who's just obsessed with film and listens to film news and media and just all that kind of stuff all the time, I don't know, it was kind of fun. And the whole movie and the whole situation and having these people being in charge with it all, I don't know, I just found that really, really enjoyable and fun. The one thing, and it's not a negative, but in a lot of ways, it is my big negative of the episode, and probably of the season so far, is we see, like, we half see, like, half a shot, and we hear them in the movie. Give me, like, 2.5 minutes of that movie. I want to see how bad it is. And I just think how good it would have been if they just got, like, 2 huge actors in this movie with the big CGI robot sleeping or whatever it was. Like, I just think that would have been so much fun. And then you cut to all the Swedes and they're all just like, and they just hate it. I just feel like that's a little bit of a missed opportunity since it was such a focus of the episode. But hey, whatever. Eric from True Blood, he has a moment with Shiv and that was quite intimate. He reveals that he's completely insane and messed up with the whole blood thing. I don't even know what to say about that. That's just the most insane thing I've ever heard. The way he's so casual, he's like, I just gave her like a liter of my blood and it was a joke. Then it wasn't, but then it was a joke again. It didn't sound like it was ever a joke, Eric from True Blood. What are you talking about? And Shiv is so calm. I found that so upsetting. But apart from us all finding out that Madsen is just super weird and gross and has got this horrible thing looming over him with one of his workers, the scene really plays out as a bonding scene between him and Shiv, and he doesn't really have that with any of the other characters. And then Shiv kind of names off a couple of people who will be able to help him get out of this situation. And of course, at the end, that turns out to be the people who aren't on the kill list. And at first, I was like, ooh, is it just the girls? Is he going to be really weird and creepy and sexual about this? But then I was thinking about it, I'm like, no, they're the people that Shiv said could help him with his blood thing. Like, I know that he's like a rich, crazy billionaire, so of course he's got some kind of weird kink going on. They all must, because apparently money makes you insane. I mean, it still doesn't make me not want all the money, but it should. It should.